Welcome to the build of my carport, my Versatube carport. This video is going to be more of a show and tell with pictures and explanations. So if you've ever thought about doing one of these yourself, I will give you my thoughts and tips on how to build your own. Here we see the layout of the frame on the ground. I am trying to figure out where exactly I want to position the carport, so I have the lower rails sitting on the ground right now. This is very early prep work. This is kind of just seeing what it looks like. In the Versatube kit, they give you these big pieces of rebar, as you could see in the photo, if you could see those sticking out of the frame. I kind of pushed those into the ground to kind of move the frame around and kind of set it down so I could take measurements and get a good look at it. You can see I have the rafters, the trusses laid out behind there because I was storing all of the pieces in my backyard except for the panels at this point. So another rough look at the layout. At this point, the rails are not fastened together. What you do not see is all the measurements that we're taking. Lots of side-to-side measurements. I was trying to plumb the frame off the side of the house as a reference because I assumed that the side of the house is square and I wanted it to be parallel to the house. Also, the land, if you cannot tell, there's a grade on the land here. The garage is higher than the end point of the carport, and there was about I think it was like a 15-inch slope from front to back there. You'll see in the photos as we go along how I had to lay out this and compensate for this. I decided that laying this on the ground was not going to work because of the slope in my yard. So I came up with the idea after watching other videos that I would build some concrete piers and level it off by setting it on top of concrete piers that I sink into the ground. Here you see that I rented an auger from the Home Depot to drill the holes out for the concrete piers. The piers were actually sunk into the ground as far as you need to sink them. Like I needed to go at least 3 feet into the ground because of the frost line here. If you've never used an auger, let me tell you that this is a one-man auger. It was a lot of work. You wouldn't think so, but it is. I was sore for a whole week after this. This project was carefully supervised by my pup. As you can see her here, she was my companion and shadow during the whole process. Here's the real test. Did I put the holes properly? Did I get everything squared up? I should have done this from the start instead of relying upon the measurements I had with the Versatube frame. So I didn't do too bad. Using the stakes and the string with levels, I was able to get everything equal with each other, level. And I mean each top of the sonotube is level with the start. So in the front corner here is where I based all the measurements off of for the rest of the sonotubes. I used a water level, you can look that up, to establish my base, but at this point when I used the strings, I would just lay the string across to get the level with the string levels. Each of the sonotubes was filled with rocks in the bottom and carefully trimmed on a table saw to the right height and fine-tuned along the process here. This is all the prep work that's very important before you start pouring concrete, is to make sure that you get this step correct. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of patience, but do it right, do it once, and you will come out with a good result. I'd considered renting a cement mixer to do this, but I was going to do it over multiple nights after work, and that wouldn't work for a rental because it would wind up costing a lot more, and then the whole shuffling and returning it multiple times because I didn't want to rent it for an entire week. So I wound up buying one off a marketplace for $150. It worked out extremely well. It was an old cement mixer, as you can see in the pictures, but throwing a couple bags in there and measuring out the water and letting it churn and mix that concrete up was a lifesaver and cut the time of this project considerably. With the concrete set, I put the rails on top of the concrete, took my measurements again, and was satisfied with how I leveled it out. It wasn't exactly perfect, but I was able to use some poly shims, which are made out of plastic, to level it out perfectly. So in this picture here, it shows how I was able to measure it out and get it square. I used 2x6s, spanned across and clamped to make sure that I squared it up. This is a very crucial step because if you get the level and the squareness incorrect, your building will not be right. Take your time at this. I took my time, took many measurements before I was comfortable enough with bolting the frame down to the concrete. I used some concrete anchors. I used a masonry bit with a hammer drill to drill the holes in the tops of the piers here. During this process, I learned that that it wasn't completely level, and I said that I used poly shims to shim up the difference in some of the piers, but also that I hadn't centered the piers with the bolt holes properly. Good thing these were 8-inch sonotubes, so I had some wiggle room on where I could place the bolts. I did only have to re-drill one hole through the frame to make it work right. Now that I have the base frame attached to the concrete piers, I decided to build the trusses in my driveway. This turned out to be the right call because assembling them and bolting them or using the self-tappers to put them together while it was on the frame was not wise, wouldn't have been wise. I was able to build these, and then we just walked them over to the frame and just inserted them onto the top of each of the posts on the base of the frame. Stay tuned for part 2 of the Versatube Carport. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and comment and thumbs up.